Okay, Daf Yomi. We're in chapter 5, Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Bet. Lamed Aleph Amud Bet. Im Ra'o Tir'eh, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Hamra Hana Lifnei Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam, Im Ra'o Mutav, V'im Lav Tir'eh. So we're discussing the plethora of laws that can be derived from Hana's prayer in the beginning of Samuel. So what's the double language of Im Ra'o Tireh? If you will look upon me. If you will look upon. It could have just said if you will look. It says if you will surely look is another way of translating. The double language means something. Rabbi Elazar said, Hana said before God, Master of the universe, if you will look, Ra'o, if you look at me now, fine. And if not, in any case, you will see. Tireh, the first one is in the present, and the second one is in the future. So Hana is teaching about prayer, that if you, either your prayer, it's fine, if you want to answer me now, that's great. If you want to, and I understand, you can answer me later, but you have to see my situation and see myself and respond to my suffering sometime. Elech ve'estater b'fnei Elkana ba'ali v'kevan demistatra mashku lismesota v'im ata oseh toratacha plaster shene'amar v'i ata oseh toratacha plaster shene'amar v'nikata v'nizra'a zara. What was Hana threatening? She said, I'm going to go and seclude myself with another man. And of course the Sota law that we see in the I think it's Numbers. In the book of Numbers, we have the law of the Sota, the adulterous woman. If there were witnesses that she had secluded herself for, let's say, 7 minutes or so, or perhaps even less, with a man that her husband had warned her about, and said, "I don't want you." He was jealous. The husband was jealous, and he said, "I don't want you to seclude yourself with so and so." And she was witnessed secluding herself in a private place with so-and-so, then she is a suspected adulteress. So Hana was threatening a trick. She wanted children, right? She couldn't have children. She had Elkanah had 2 wives, and his other wife had 10 children, and Hana had no children. And so she said, I'm going to, going to seclude myself with another man, and then Elkanah is going to bring me to the court, and I'm going to have to go to the temple, and I'm going to have to bring the Sota water. Right. Back then it was the temple had not yet been built. So they'd have to go to the Mishkan in Shiloh. And the Sota water determines whether, if she gets sick and dies, then she was an adulteress, and if she doesn't, she has children. So it says it was a trick to have children, because she would seclude herself with another man, but not actually have any relations with the man, not even touch the man, and therefore she's accused, and she drinks the waters of the Sota, and because she's innocent, she never actually had an adulterous relationship, then she's blessed with a child, and it says Iata oseh toratcha plaster. You don't make your Torah false. Plaster is a very interesting word coming from the Greek, plastes, meaning a molder or a molderer. Not molderer. I think mold. Like moldering in the grave. A molder, somebody who makes molds. A job of somebody to make molds, or a modeler, somebody who makes models. Metaphorically, it means a false person, somebody who's just modeling but not really, doing. So God does not make His Torah phony. He says that the Torah says that if I was an adulteress, I will die, and if I was not an adulteress, I'd be blessed with a child. So that was a trick. So this is Rabbi Elazar's opinion. So Rabbi Elazar's opinion said if she was barren, she'd be remembered by God and grandchildren. But according to another opinion, some people say that you drink the soda, the woman who drinks the soda waters and she's innocent, then if she previously had difficult childbirth, then her next child she'll have an easy childbirth. Nekevot, you let her Zacharim. And some say that if she's innocent and before she just had girls, then she drinks the water, she'll have boys. Shchorim, you let it Levanim. Some say that if her previous children were dark-skinned, then the children after will be light-skinned. For some reason, in that culture, in that day and age, dark people were considered to be unattractive. Of course, now we know black is beautiful. So you let it levanim. Ktsarim, you let it arokim. Why? Because black is malchus. Malchus is Beit David. Anyhow, so this is not a Kabbalah share. Anyhow, you let if she had little tiny children, the waters of the Sota would make it that her next children would be tall. So if you say that that's the case, it doesn't mean if that's the result of the Sota water, it wouldn't mean that she definitely necessarily has children. So the Tanya, V'nikata, V'nisrazara, the Tara Nebraita, the Tanaim disputed the verse in Numbers about Sota where it says, then she shall be acquitted and she shall conceive. Malamed, Shim Hayata, Akara, Nifkaded. But that teaches, of course, that if she was barren, then she is the Sota waters and she's innocent, that she will conceive. Dibur Rabbi Yishmael, Amar le Rabbi Akiva v'im ken yelchu kol akarot kulam yistatru. If so, then any woman who was barren, all they do is they just go, they'd seclude themselves with the men, and they'd be forced to drink the Sota waters, and then they would conceive. It'd make it too easy. So, in other words, like I just said, if they hadn't committed adultery, they would be blessed children. So all the barren women could use this trick. Like we just said, no, but it's rather to teach us that it's not that if she had children that it's for women who already had children, and if they had children that were somewhat undesirable, then afterwards you had children that are in fact desirable. My imra otire. According to Rabbi Akiva's explanation, what does it mean the double language ra'otire mean? What did Hana mean when she said ra'otire? Dibra Torah b'loshen b'nei adam. According to Rabbi Akiva, that's just the way people speak, and you cannot derive any special meaning from it. Ba'ani amatecha. In the oath or prayer uttered by Hana, she refers to herself as your servant 3 times. Ba'ani amatecha, your maidservant. Ba'ani amatecha, it says, and al tishkach. Ba'ani amatecha means the affliction of your maidservant. Al tishkach et amatecha, don't forget your maidservant. V'natata lamatcha, and will give your maidservants. So what are these 3 languages of maidservants supposed to mean? They come to teach us the following. Rabbi Yossi Amar Yossi B'Rabbi Chanina Shalosh amatot halalu lama Amra Hana lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ribono Shel Olam Shlosha b'dikei mita barata ba'isha. Why are these 3 maidservants, amatot, mentioned in the three times? They're cited to teach that Hana said before God, Master of the universe, you have created 3 crucibles, potentially leading to death. Bidkei mita, crucibles that lead to death. Barata b'isha, in a woman. Amrila shalosha dibkei mita. Some people say it's not crucibles. Crucibles palenchetent. Some say it was not crucibles potentially leading to death in a woman, but rather it's 3 accelerants of death in a woman. That's the lashon is divke mita. So the Elohen, and what are these either crucibles leading to deaths or accelerants that would lead to death? They are Nida, Chala, and Hadlakat Ner. The 3 laws that particularly pertain to women. The laws of Nida, ritual purity. The laws of taking Chala, from baking bread. And the laws of lighting the Shabbos candles. Klum avarti al achat mehen. And Hana said, wasn't I careful about all of them? So in other words, Hana said the word amatot, the word ama, a maidservant, 3 times, to say to God, I've been careful about all these mitzvot and you're not giving me a child. And There's an etymological similarity between the word amatecha, and the word mita. Amatecha, mita. They sound similar, so there's some kind of a word connection. So in Shabbat, in the Talmud and Shabbos, we learn that a failure for a woman to follow the laws of nida, or to follow the laws of lighting Shabbos candles, or to follow the laws of taking challah, results by death by the hand of heaven. So why would God want to be so strict and punish with death for failure to do these mitzvahs dafka? The reason given here is because these are mitzvot that women
generally have an opportunity to perform, and it's something that's there before them, and if they don't, and it's a mitzvah, and if they don't do it, then they're not right with God. So another explanation, it's connected to Eve's sin. All of these three, nida, and the laws of nida, and laws of taking challah, and laws of lighting Shabbos candles, they can all be connected to Eve's sin in the Garden of Eden, and the result of which was death. So another illogical reason would say women who don't keep the laws of nida, who would perhaps have relations while menstruating, there's actually, according to medical science, they have a higher chance of getting cervical cancer than women who don't have relations while they are menstruating. So that's one. But that's not the reason why a woman keeps the laws of nida. It's a good thing to start with, to say I'm going to keep the laws of nida, so I have less of a chance of getting cervical cancer. But there's also the faith thing, because a non-Jewish woman doesn't have to go to the mikveh, and she's also part of the study. And so we can start doing mitzvahs because for physical reasons and medical reasons. That's a good thing, but it's not. But in terms of it's only the beginning. It's like lo lishma. It's not for the sake of heaven. But we say that if someone starts to do something not for the sake of heaven, eventually they do it for the sake of heaven. We continue. It says again, Hana's prayer. She says, "Natata la'amatcha zera anashim." She said, "And you will grant your servant an offspring of men." My zera anashim. What does an offspring of men mean? Amar Rav Gavra beguvrin. Rav said, Hana prayed for a man among men, an exceptional son. Ushmuel Amar Zera she Mosheach Shnei Anashim. Shmuel said, not the prophet Shmuel, but the Amora Shmuel, the great sage, he said, Zera Anashim, according to the sage Shmuel, is Shnei Anashim, because Shmuel says it's in the plural, so it referred to Shaul v'David. Two people who, in other words, the people who her son would eventually have an outstanding impact on their life and change the course of history. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Zera Sheshakul Kishnei Anashim. According to Rabbi Yochanan, Hana prayed that she would bear an offspring who would be the equivalent of two of the world's greatest men. Why? Because we have a pasuk in Tehillim that says, Moshe v'Aaron v'Kohanav v'Shmuel v'Koreh Shmo. That Moses and Aaron are among his priests, and Samuel among those who call in God's name. In Psalm 99. So the first, Moses and Aaron among his priests, and then Samuel. So that is to say that Samuel is equated together on the stature of Moshe and Aaron. But Rabbanan Amrei Zera Anashim, and the rabbis say that Zera Anashim, an offspring of men, refers to Zera Shemuvla ben Anashim. That Hana was praying, when Hana said Zera Anashim, she was praying for an offspring that would be inconspicuous among the men. In other words, not stand out in any way. That he wouldn't be looked at as strange or arrogant.
Ki ata, or any evil eye perhaps. Okay, Ki ata Ravdimi Amar Lo Aroch Velo Gutz, Lo Katan Velo Alam, Lo Tzachor Velo Gichor, Lo Chacham Velo Pitipesh. That Hana was praying that what kind of a son do I want? That Hana was praying so strongly for a son. She said, I want a son who is neither too tall, neither too short, neither too small, not too fat, not too white, not too red, neither too intelligent and not too stupid. Just right. Sounds like Goldilocks a little bit. But, when Hana came to the temple with her son Samuel, Mazel Tov, she had the boy, her prayer was answered. She told Eli, the priest at the time, my Lord, as your soul lives, I am the woman who stood here with you to pray before the Lord. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Mikan she'asor le'shev b'toch arba amot shel tefillah. So, for saying, when Hana says, Ani Yeshah hanitzevet imcha, I'm the woman who stood here with you, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says that we can learn a halacha from this, that it's forbidden to sit within 4 cubits of somebody who's praying. Because the verse said, who stood here with you. Nitzevet, the word stood. So when Hana was praying, Eli stood. He didn't sit down in front of her or next to her. He stood alongside her because she was praying. Elenar hazeh hitpalalti. In Hana's prayer, she said, "For this youth I prayed." Amar Rabbi Elazar Shmuel Moreh Halacha Lifnei Rabo Haya Shenemar Vayishchatu et apar vayaviu et anar El Eli. Umishum de Vayishchatu et apar heviu hanar El Eli. So Hana's emphasis in speaking, she said, for this youth I prayed. She was praying to protect him from danger. What was the danger she was praying to protect him from? As Rabbi Elazar said, that Shmuel, the prophet, when he was a child, he taught a law in front of his master, Eli. Hana wanted to pray that he would not be punishable with death, as is stated in 1 Shmuel. There's a pasuk in 1 Shmuel, Vayishchatu et apar vayaviu et anar el Eli. And we slaughtered the cow, and they brought the youth to Eli. The verse is puzzling. Why did they slaughter the cow? Why did they slaughter the cow, and then they brought the boy, the little Samuel, to Eli? What's the connection? Because they slaughtered the cow, therefore they brought the youth to Eli? It doesn't make sense. Ela amar lahen Eli, kiru kohen leitev v'lishchot. Rather, this is what happened. Eli said to those who brought the offering, call a priest, quick, call it the priest. Hello, is this the priest? And what's he going to do? He's going to come and slaughter the offering. Chazan hu Shmuel dehavu mahadr batar kohen l'mishchat. So they were there in the temple, they were in the Mishkan. The tabernacle was there in Shiloh, and they were making sacrifices. And so Eli said, bring a priest, because the slaughter has to be done by a priest. Amar lehen lama lechu la'adore batar kohen l'mishchad shchita bazar kashera. So little Shmuel, in front of his rabbi or his master Eli, he said, "What are you looking for a priest for? Don't you know the law that you can that anybody who's not a priest can also slaughter? I mean, a Levi or a Yisrael. It doesn't have to be a Kohen." So they brought the little boy before Eli. Atu elakamid Eli. Amarle manalachai. They said, how do you know this, to Samuel? Amarle mikativ v'shachat kohen. So little Samuel said, it is written, and the priest shall offer v'shachat kohen. Sorry, it's written, and the priest shall slaughter. It says, Samuel said to him, it says the priest shall slaughter, indicating the offering may only be slaughtered by a priest.
That's the way they read, the Steinsaltz Gemara reads it. I read it differently. It says, I believe, Manalachai, when he said, how do you know, when Eli said to Shmuel, how do you know this? And then Eli continues speaking. He says, Eli said to Shmuel, he said, the pasuk says, V'yikrivu kohanim, and Eli was trying to justify his position. That's the way I'm reading it. V'yikrivu kohanim, and the priest shall offer, it says. Mikabala ve'elach mitzvah kahuna. Sorry, no, Steinsaltz is right, I'm wrong. I'm going to go back and I'm going to say it the way the great rabbis explain it, and the great rabbis say that this is the true meaning. It says, it is written, and the priest shall slaughter, indicating the offering. If it says the priest shall slaughter, that might lead you to believe that the offering may only be done by a priest. But it also says, and the priest shall offer, not just slaughter. The first says the priest shall slaughter, and the second says the priest shall offer. That means only from the stage of receiving the blood in the bowls and onward is it is a mitzvah coming upon the priest. From the reception of the blood and all the other avodas that you need to do a kosher offering in the temple. That's from that stage, from the collecting of the blood of the animal after it's slaughtered, and the sprinkling, and the bringing of it, and the sprinkling of it. Those are the priest's job. But the actual slaughtering at the beginning could be done by anyone. That's all Shmuel speaking. And Eli Amarle Memar Shafir Ka'amart Migu Mora Halach Lifnei Rabach At V'kol Hamarei Halacha Bifnei Rabo Chayav Mita. He said, you're correct. That's the right halacha. However, there's another halacha. Anybody who teaches a law in front of his master is culpable of the death penalty. By the hand of heaven, for showing contempt for his teacher. If you teach a halacha in front of your rabbi, doesn't mean they're going to take you to the court and lob your head off. It means that it's called death by the hand of heaven. That's in the halacha. One is always forbidden to teach the halacha in the presence of his teacher. And one who does so is punished by death by the hand of heaven. It says in the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch. One who is a distance of at least 12 mil from his teacher, a distance derived from the Tractate Sanhedrin, from the size of the Israelite camp in the desert, and someone asks him a question, he may answer. In other words, if you're more than 12 Talmudic miles, I think that's Talmudic miles 2,000 amas, roughly 4,000 meters. So 4,000 times 12 meters, 48,000 meters away. That's 48 kilometers. Let's say if you're 48 kilometers away, you're roughly, I might be getting the numbers a little bit off. Then you can teach. Somebody asks you a matter of halakha, and you have a rabbi, and you are like a yeshiva guy. Then you can say it. However, it is forbidden to establish himself as a halachic authority until his teacher dies or has given him permission. So once your teacher gives you smicha to teach halachot, depending on if it's just in Orach Chaim or Yoredea, or if it's the later Yadim Yadim, it depends on what you're approved to be a halachic authority on, because your teacher said it's okay for you to do it. Then you can start teaching. And you be used, if people use you as a halachic authority, and you give the right answer, then in retrospect you're a halachic authority. So that's the Ramah. Some say the one who issues halachic rulings within 12 mil of his teacher is liable to the death penalty. Beyond 12 mil, although he's prohibited from doing so, he's not liable for the death penalty by the hand of heaven. Okay, let's continue. So Shmuel taught the halacha to Eli, and Eli said, you're right, but you're chayav misa, culpable of death. Atya Hana v'kad savcha kamei ani ha'yisha hanitzevet imcha bazeh. Hana came along and she shouted before Eli, I am the woman who you stood next to when I prayed. Amarla
Shvaki li da'anshe. He said to her, let me punish him and I'll pray for mercy. Or from the Holy One, blessed be. So he'll be punished, but he won't be killed. Uva'ena rachame v'ahiv lach rabba mineh. Amara le al elenar hazeh hitpalalti. She said, I prayed for this. Oh, sorry. Eli was saying something not very nice. He was saying, he is culpable of death. So God is going to take him out of the world. But let me daven for you and you'll have another child. She said, no. What kind of consolation is that? Please. Hana said, El hanar hazeh hitpalalti. I prayed for this child. You don't know. Eli, you think you're such a great prophet or something. You think you're such a great priest. So, Ruach HaKodesh. What do you know? This is Shmuel the prophet. And the people of Israel and the whole world need Samuel the prophet and not another one. So that nullified the decree. So Hana hi medaberet liba. The Gemara continues to deal with Hannah's prayer and said, Hana spoke to on her heart. Amar Rabbi Elazar mishum Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra al iske liba. Rabbi Elazar said in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra, Hannah spoke to God concerning matters of her heart. Amar lefanav Ribono shel olam, kol ma shebarata b'isha, lo barata devar echad lebatala, einayim lirot, oznayim lishmoa, v'chotem lahariach, v'peh ledaber, yadayim lasot behem malacha, raglayim lahalech behem, dadim lahanik behem, dadim halalu, shenatata alibi, lama, lo lahanik behem, v'ten li ben v'anik behem. She said, everything you created eyes, and for in a woman you created for a reason, God. You created her eyes to see, and you created her legs to walk, and you created her ears to hear, etc. What about the breasts? You created these breasts in a woman are created to nurse. What about these breasts? Did you not create these breasts to nurse? Hana said before the Holy One, blessed be He. Amar Rabbi Elazar. She said, give me a son so I can nurse this child. Because you don't create anything in vain. V'amar Rabbi Elazar mishum Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra kol hayoshev b'ta'anit b'Shabbat korim lo gezar dino shel shiv mishumna ve'ein v'af al pi ken chozrin v'nifra'in mimenu din oneg Shabbos. Because Rabbi Elazar said a law in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra about the midrash about Hannah's prayer, about how she entreated God and she convinced God that He had to give her a son because she had breasts and the breasts need to be used. So in her heartfelt prayer, when she was brokenhearted before God and all of her other prayers, finally her prayer was answered. And because this law was taught in the name of Rabbi Elazar, in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra, they teach another law of Rabbi Elazar that he said in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra. Anyone who sits in observance of a fast on Shabbos, one who fasts, meaning not eating on Shabbos, he has a very great merit, and even if he has a judgment on him of 70 years, it's all going to be torn up. It's going to be voided. Because everyone is enjoying himself and a feast is prepared, and he can't eat, so it's more difficult to fast on Shabbat than any other day. Nevertheless, he's accountable. He may have ripped up any kind of judgment on his head, or any part of him, for the next 70 years. However, he's held accountable for taking away from the joy of Shabbat. There's a halacha to delight in Shabbat, owning Shabbos. So what does he do? He says he's going to have to choose another day during the week and then fast in atonement for marring the delight of Shabbat, the mitzvah of the delight of Shabbat. So anybody who takes away from the delight of Shabbat, you'd think that they should probably take on a fast day, or give tzedakah, or do something to atone for it. So if you're making Shabbat unpleasant in any way, shape, or form, you should make tshuva. And there's various ways to make tshuva. You don't have to fast. It could be a half-day fast or a whole-day fast. It could be giving tzedakah in the proper amount, or it could be
volunteering, helping the poor, something like that. Or just first of all, resolving that the next Shabbos you're not going to do anything one would not do anything to take away from the joy of Shabbat for the people around you, or even for yourself. If you take away from your own joy in Shabbat, then you are held accountable. Amar Rabbi Elazar Hana hiticha dvarim klape mala shneimar vitpilal Hashem melamed hiticha dvarim klape mala. Make sure that's filling her on right. After explaining this uncommon expression, on her heart, where does it say on her heart? V'chana hi medaberet al liba. And Hana spoke on her heart. What does it mean, on her heart, al liba? It says, Rabbi Elazar said, Hana spoke impertinently towards God on high. Hiticha devarim kuplei mala means that she spoke impertinently, somewhat disparagingly. As it is stated, v'hitpalel al Hashem. It says she prayed unto the Lord, as opposed to the common phrase to the Lord, el Hashem. Meaning she spoke impertinently to God. Similarly, Rabbi Elazar said that Elijah the prophet spoke impertinently to God, meaning with a little bit of chutzpah. Sometimes this is warranted and sometimes this is unwarranted. It depends on the situation. Shene'amar v'ata hasibote et libam acharonit. And you, Elijah said, and you, God, you have turned their hearts backward. You've turned the people's hearts away from the Torah. Elijah the prophet insinuated that God caused Israel to sin. How could you speak this way to the one and only? Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak minayin shechazar HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'hoda lo le'Eliyahu. Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak said, from where do we know that the Holy One, blessed be, ultimately conceded to Elijah that this was correct? God acquiesced to Elijah on this point. Diktiv va'asher hareoti. In a future prophecy in the book of Micha, chapter 4, it says, in that day said God, I will assemble the lame, etc. Gather those who are abandoned, and I will gather those with whom I have dealt wickedly. God admits in the 4th chapter of Micha that He dealt with some people in the world wickedly. This is very difficult theologically. How could God accuse? We say every mitzvah that we do, and any avera that we're not supposed to do, also God is not supposed to do. So with Lashon Hara, we're not supposed to say Lashon Hara about ourselves. There's a difference between Lashon Hara and admitting the truth. It's a mitzvah actually. If you dealt wickedly with another person, you admit it. You don't have to blast it all over the news. You don't have to stand up in shul and announce it. But one has to make amends and admit it. So God did so too. But God, it's still difficult theologically. If God is great, if God is the source of goodness, how could He? And even we say Hashem Eloheinu Hashem Echad, God Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Say that Adonai, God of mercy, is Eloheinu, God of judgment. And even God's judgment is mercy. So what does this mean? So even God's wickedness is righteous. God's wickedness is righteousness. Maybe there's a lower level. Maybe God is speaking in the language of men, and in the language of men, in the way we see it in this world, it's wicked. It's like nobody knows why the Holocaust happened. We could say that God, for innocent children to die, we could call God wicked. But in the retrospect, we're going to look back. What's the Geula? What's the final redemption? When we look back and we say,